Welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help professionals who are ready to transition from the life they thought they once wanted to the one that they were made for. I believe that life is a series of transitions. We're constantly going from one place in our life, in mind, body, spirit, to another. And my intention with these videos is to let you all look under the hood, so to speak, at the transitions that are unfolding in my life and hopefully help you with the transitions that are happening in yours. So thank you so much for joining me, being here with me, and being receptive to what I have to share. Sometimes transitions can be really scary. They can make us feel stuck, especially when there are those things in our lives that used to make us feel really happy and all of a sudden they just don't anymore. So anyway, I hope these videos give you some great insights, tips, ideas, and maybe even a little bit of courage to help you work through whatever is keeping you stuck from going through a transition of your own. So as you may already know, my 2021 focus word for the year is freedom. And today's topic centers around the idea of being free to be who we are. And I've been thinking a lot about this topic for really personal reasons, but also, I think we all have this experience where sometimes we're afraid to show up as we truly are authentically because we're afraid of what other people might think of us, or maybe we're afraid we'll say something wrong or do something wrong and then people will tease us or shame us in some way. Maybe it's because we're afraid that we won't be just accepted for who we are for whatever reason. And sometimes it's because we're just really uncertain about who we are and how we're showing up. But this topic has a really personal reason for me too. Those of you who know me may already know that I have a child who identifies as gender fluid. We learned that at some point over the pandemic, and he was born female, but internally feels male and prefers male pronouns. He dresses fluidly, however. Some days he'll dress in a more stereotypical masculine way, and other times he will dress in a much more stereotypical feminine way. He also recently let us know that he would like to go by a different name. So that is quite a huge transition that is taking place in our lives right now. So you might be wondering right off the bat how I'm handling all of that. I am going to get to that, but first I want to share a little bit of the backstory with you. So for a while, our child was really unhappy. He'd been a very happy kid until the 6th grade. He's never been immediately forthcoming with the information that he shares with us until he feels ready to share it. We often have to wait a long time. We'll know that something is up, but we won't be sure until he actually shares it. And trying to pry it out of him really, really doesn't work. So then the pandemic happened, and we could sort of explain away some of the unhappiness and the fights and everything like that on the fact that we were all stuck in the same house together without much to do. But one day, after a really heated discussion about whether or not we would allow him to get a septum piercing, he decided to write us a letter and let us know that he is gender fluid. And it was actually quite a relief because it finally gave us some kind of understanding of why he was so unhappy. And as it turns out, he was so unhappy was because he was trying to be himself, but without really being open about it. And who knows how long he'd been preventing himself from being himself. So while I can't completely relate to my kids' experience with gender identity and expression, I can relate to feeling like I haven't been able to be myself in various times in my life. I think as kids, we all have that experience where well-meaning adults and friends might nudge us in the direction of adopting a different persona. I don't know if any of these statements resonate with you, but you might have heard things like, you're being too loud, or you're too quiet, you're too shy, you're too sensitive. Why are you wearing that? What's up with your hair today? That musician stinks. Why do you like them? Only sissies do that. Boys don't cry. Girls don't roughhouse. There's so many things that I know a lot of us have been told over the years. And hearing those things as a kid makes you stop and wonder, oh, is there something wrong with me? Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. If somebody else is noticing it, I should probably stop that. So, the question is, how do your early childhood experiences like this end up modifying how you show up in the world as an adult and later on in life? So when people point to certain behaviors of ours or beliefs or tastes that are outside of their personal preferences or expectations they have for you, it can really put a lot of pressure on you to not show up as yourself anymore. So let's take a look at the scenario where two kids are playing and they're trying to figure out what they want to do. And one kid really wants to play with a dollhouse, and the other kid wants to play with race cars. Let's say the race car kid tells the other kid, why would you want to play with a dollhouse? That's a girl's toy. And, not wanting to be teased, the kid who wanted to play with the dollhouse decides to go ahead and say, all right, fine, we can play with race cars, even though he doesn't really want to. So that kid in that situation decided to do that because he wanted to feel safe and accepted, and he disregarded his own wishes to, keep himself happy and made someone else happy instead. He let somebody else do what they wanted to do. Just as an aside, I'd love to hear in the comments at any point if you've had any stories like this, if you've experienced anything like this, if you feel comfortable sharing. I think it normalizes the experience for everyone when we share those times when we may have been shamed for being who we are, and it helps us really digest and understand what happened, and helps us recover from that, and helps us uncover who we are. So feel free to share in any way that you'd like. When we get used to not being our authentic selves, when we don't feel free to be who we are, it's really easy to get stuck in those moments. Later on in life, if you get used to not being who you really are, you might get stuck in your relationships, you might get stuck in a job, you might get stuck acting and being in ways that don't really feel right to you. You might end up wearing clothes that you don't really like. You might end up participating in activities that you don't really enjoy. This is how I ended up seeing Kiss 3 times. You might also end up deferring whenever you're making plans with friends. You might end up deferring to whatever anybody else wants to do. It's of course fine to take turns, but it's also really important to state, your wishes and wants in the world as well. We can easily keep ourselves small or limited when we keep ourselves hidden. We don't get to see how we could be in healthy relationships. We don't see all that we could be in a job that's supportive and engaging for us. We lose a sense of how we really want to be and act in the world. And we waste a lot of time not enjoying our lives completely. After a while, we may not even know who we are anymore. So the reason we choose to override who we are is totally understandable. It keeps us feeling safe. It makes us feel like we fit in. It gives us confidence in the short term. It gives us a sense of security, and it helps us avoid conflict in our lives. But in the long term, it can be really detrimental. Not being yourself can lead to a lot of life dissatisfaction, feeling unfulfilled, depression, and lots of other bad things. If you're not authentic in your relationships, which means that other people don't get to see who you really are, and that's a shame. Another bad thing that can happen is that you're constantly censoring yourself, second guessing yourself, which means that you eventually lose the ability to trust yourself completely. You start looking to everyone else to make the decisions for you, rather than making those decisions from a place of authenticity and alignment. You keep yourself small. And a lot of times what can happen is a buildup of resentment and anger that can come out in a lot of, other unhealthy ways. Maybe it's the way you interact with other people, or maybe you just feel a lot of stress and anxiety all the time. So in other words, it's just really not healthy to not be yourself. So what if you notice that you have a tendency to override who you are in order to keep the peace, or avoid dealing with consequences that seem too overwhelming because you were afraid to be yourself? Here's an exercise that you can try. You can write it out, or you can meditate with it, whatever you feel comfortable doing. So the first thing to do is to identify a place in your life where you're not allowing yourself to just be yourself. It might be a work situation or in a relationship, or maybe it's how you interact with people that you meet, strangers that you might meet. Then what you can do is write or think about what feelings come up for you when you think about this experience. And when you notice those feelings, try to also notice what the thoughts are that go with those feelings. And once you identify your thoughts and your feelings, think about if you were going to show up in that same scenario where you weren't being yourself, if you were going to show up as yourself, or maybe in the opposite way, what would that look like? How would you act? What would you say? As you're imagining this, check in with how you feel about imagining yourself in this way. Does it feel scary? Does it feel uncomfortable? Does it feel empowering? Does it feel exciting? What are the thoughts that come up for you? How authentic does it feel to who you really are? If you think of a scenario that really doesn't feel authentic to you, try to think of another way that you could respond. How does it feel? What are the thoughts that come up with it? And how authentic does that feel to you? Now, there can be the situation where you really don't know what's authentic to you, and that's understandable, especially if you've spent a long time not letting yourself be who you are. So one of the ways that you can get in touch with that is by sitting with what your core values are. Our core values are our beliefs about our lives, about how we want life to work, how we want our life to be, how we want to act in our life, and how we want to create structure in our lives in a way that'll create happiness and joy. If you would like a core values exercise, I have one on my website at www.tess-miller.com/resources. And you can download my exercise there, and that will help you figure out what some of your top core values are. Once you know what your core values are, you'll be able to use these to measure whether certain ways of being feel authentic to you or not. So getting back to our exercise here, once you do settle on a way of responding to that life situation that fits who you are, brainstorm ways in your life that you could be more authentic in very specific ways. Maybe you don't like the way you always defer to your family members when choosing whatever TV program to watch at the end of the day. Maybe your core value with that is fairness, and you're finding that it's not fair that everyone else gets dibs over you. So to honor that value, you could ask your family if you could all take turns choosing a program, or you could ask to make the rule that everyone has to agree. Either way, that might honor your value of fairness a little bit better. Or maybe you have a friend that says really mean things to you, but in order to keep the peace and avoid conflict, you just kind of let it happen. Your core value here that's not being honored is non-judgment, but you feel very judged by your friend. So the next time your friend says something judgmental, you can ask her or him about what the intention is in saying that. What do you mean by that? And then once you hear what they have to say about it, you can say, wow, that's really interesting, because the story I told myself when you said that was that you meant, and you can share with your friend how they're coming across in a way that's not so confrontational, but still allows you to express how you're feeling. So there are many examples of how you can, visualize yourself showing up in a variety of life scenarios. But after you've visualized yourself in different ways of being, now is the time that you get to try it out. Pick something where you feel like you're starting small, and that feels really easy for you to do. If you can easily step over a bar, you're going to want to try again, and you're going to want to raise that bar every single time. So think of a scenario in your life where you can be a little bit more of yourself. Maybe it's getting rid of some clothes and buying new ones. Maybe it's clarifying something with someone so that you have a better understanding of what they mean. It can be so many different things. So anyway, how do I feel about my child's gender identity? Well, I'm super proud that he is brave enough to share with us who he really is at such a young age. And I'm super happy to know that at the age of 13, if he can handle something like that, then chances are, oh, there's the cat. Hi, Myra. Chances are really good that he's going to be able to handle the small stuff later on, or other big things that come up when he's an adult. So it gives me a lot of comfort. It gives me a lot of hope for him. And of course, I know there are going to be a lot of challenges as we move forward with him in navigating some of the social views that are not so positive when it comes to gender identity. But the challenges that we face when we dare to be ourselves in our lives really pales in comparison to the damage we do to ourselves if we don't allow ourselves to be who we are. So my hope is that by really supporting my kid in being who he is, he's going to end up having a really good and healthy life, and that's great. So I'd love to hear how this message resonates with you. If you're ready to transition from the life you used to want to the one that you were made for, consider setting up a free coaching session with me. You can sign up on my website, www.tess-miller.com. Go to services, click on the Test Your Wings complimentary session and set up a time on my calendar, and we'll be on our way. So you can also find me on Facebook under my business name, Wings Unfolded, or you can find me by name on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. And if you want more free stuff, please subscribe to my email list. I send out an email every week, and I share my thoughts, and I give you updates and any free resources that I make available. It would mean so much if you would please like and share these videos or any of my resources with friends and family who would benefit from what I have to offer. Remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Take care and have an awesome week.